All started from one simple moment that should run smoothly without interruption. Park Jimin stood in the middle of the set, his face serious, his eyes focused on the camera, as if he was preparing to give one of the best shots of his life. Around him, the atmosphere was actually already a little shaky as the staff and other members started to hold back laughter. But Jimin, with such a calm expression, suddenly raised his hand slightly and said in a half-pleading, half-warning tone, "Don't laugh, this is serious." That sentence immediately made it harder for everyone to restrain themselves. There was something about the way Jimin spoke, a mixture of sincerity and innocence, that made the situation even funnier. But they still try professionals. The camera starts rolling, the lights are on, and everyone takes a breath, trying to lock in their expressions so they don't break in the middle of the take. Jimin started running his scene. Her movements were smooth, her expression turned deeper, really getting into the character she was trying to portray. For a few seconds, everything looks perfect. Even the people who were almost laughing started thinking, okay, we did it this time. He's very serious. But just at that point, something small happened. Perhaps it was just a small detail, either the way he moved his shoulders, or the micro-expressions that suddenly appeared on his face, that inadvertently reminded everyone of how funny this situation is. And like a domino effect, one person began to smile, the other was shaken along, and the solemn atmosphere began to crack slowly. Jimin, who was initially the most serious, suddenly noticed the change. He looked at the camera, then at the staff, and in a split second, his tense expression turned confused. As if he asked without a word, why? And it was precisely that moment that became the breaking point of everything. Instead of staying afloat, Jimin became the first person who could not help himself. The laughter just burst out, not a small laugh, but a loose laugh that really came from the heart. He leaned over a little, covered his mouth, but obviously it didn't help. His voice was the loudest in the room. Ironically, this is the person who a few seconds earlier begged everyone not to laugh. And now, he himself is at the center of the chaos. Everyone immediately joined in laughing louder, not only because of the situation, but because of how quickly Jimin betrayed the rules he had created himself. He's trying to control himself. Wait, seriously, let's do it again, he said, still laughing in his voice. But every time he tried to return to the starting position, his eyes met with someone, and that alone was enough to make him laugh again. Even before the camera was completely ready, he had already lost composure again. What makes this moment so memorable is not just because it's funny, but because it shows a very human side of Jimin. He is not only a performer who is always perfect on stage, but also someone who can get caught up in small moments and can't get out of them, just like the rest of us. There's honesty in the laughter. Not contrived, not restrained, absolutely spontaneous. And that's precisely where the attraction is. Fans who see moments like this not only see their idol, but also see someone who can laugh without filters, who is not afraid to look failed in front of the camera, and the more he tries to fix the situation, the funnier it becomes. Because every attempt to get back serious instead feels like a setup for the next laugh. He would take a deep breath, calm down, put on a focused face, then 1 second later, the corners of his lips started to rise again, and boom, the laughter returned. In the end, the take may not go as originally planned. But precisely because of that, the moment becomes much more valuable. Not just a perfect finish, but a small journey full of laughter behind it. Jimin himself finally gave up. He raised his hand again, this time not to warn, but as if admitting defeat. Okay, I can't, this is too funny, he said while still smiling broadly. And everyone in the room knows, this is one of those moments they will never forget, because in a world that often demands perfection, a moment like this feels like a breath of fresh air. A moment where everything falls apart, but that's exactly where the beauty is. And of course, Jimin, originally a serious cop, ended up enjoying the chaos the most. That's why many people say, Jimin is not only talented, but also has a natural charm that is difficult to explain. He can turn an ordinary situation into something special, even with just one sincere laugh. And in this moment, he's not only making people laugh, he's also showing that sometimes, the best thing we can do is stop trying so hard, and laugh together. And after the laughter subsided, although it never really went away, the atmosphere in the room changed completely. No more pressure to look perfect, no more desperate attempts to keep a serious expression. Everyone has already fallen into that moment, and oddly enough, it is precisely there that the best energy begins to emerge. Park Jimin was still standing in place, his breathing was not yet fully stabilized, his eyes were slightly watery from laughing too much, but his smile could not be lost. He tried again, this time with a different approach. Okay, really, this is the last, don't bother ya, he said, but his own tone already sounded like he wasn't sure. Even before anyone reacted, he himself had almost laughed again. That made everyone even more nervous, because it was obvious that he really wanted to succeed, but the situation was too difficult to control. Camera back rolling. Everyone is trying to make room, give the opportunity to finally get the desired shot. Jimin took a deep breath, closed his eyes for a moment, then opened them with a much calmer expression. For a few seconds, everything feels like it's back to the beginning, serious, focused, and in control, but this time, the atmosphere was different. There were remnants of laughter still hanging in the air, like a small spark that could ignite at any moment. And sure enough, it only took one small moment, perhaps a slightly strange breathing sound, or an overly dramatic movement, and Jimin instantly lost control again that he turned slightly, covering his face with both hands, but his body was already shaking from holding back the laughter that could no longer be held back. Why is it like this? He said in between laughs, as if completely confused with himself. But it's precisely that confusion that makes everything even funnier. The staff behind the camera had not even tried to hide their reaction. Some bowed, some kept their mouths shut, and others just gave up laughing heartily. It's no longer about professionalism or not, it's too honest a moment to stop. Jimin finally lowered his hand and looked at the camera with an expression mixed between embarrassment and resignation. This can't be used, right? He said with a small smile. But that's exactly where the beauty lies. Moments like these are often the most memorable, even more so than the perfect result. That he then sat for a while, trying to calm down. His hands still occasionally covered his face whenever he recalled what had just happened. But her smile remained, like a sign that she herself was enjoying the little mess. A few moments later, he stood up again. This time, his expression was more relaxed. No more pressure to have to succeed in one take. Let's take it easy, he said, more to himself than to anyone else. And perhaps precisely because he stopped imposing, everything began to seem lighter. The next take went smoother. There was still a small smile on the corner of her lips, but she managed to finish the scene without really breaking out again. And when the director finally says, "Cut," the whole room immediately gives a small round of applause, not just because the take was a success, but because the journey leading up to it was so colorful. Jimin himself immediately laughed again, but this time more calmly. He bowed slightly, as if thanking, then said, "Finally yes," in a relieved tone. But obviously, the most memorable was not his success at the end, but all those moments in the middle of the unexpected, because in the end, things like this make people continue to fall for him. Not just because of his talent, but because of his authenticity. He wasn't trying to look funny, he was naturally funny. He didn't plan for that moment, it just happened, and he let it happen, and maybe, that's where the secret is. In a world often filled with scripts and plans, Jimin shines brightest when things run out of control. When she laughs the loudest after saying, "Don't laugh," when she fails to stay serious, and when she finally accepts that not everything has to be perfect. The moment may only last a few minutes, but the effect is much longer. People who were there will remember it as a day where work felt like play, where laughter was more important than the end result, and where one person, who initially just wanted everything to go smoothly, was precisely the reason everyone couldn't stop smiling. And if the moment is replayed many times, one thing is certain, everyone who watches it will feel the same. A small smile that slowly appeared, then a laugh that perhaps could not be held back. Because energy is contagious. Honesty is felt. And Jimin, without the need to try hard, managed to make one simple moment into something truly alive.